What's up, everybody? Welcome back to the Having Report podcast. I am Brad Mines, your host. Today we are with Christian. Christian is an experienced Bitcoiner and a new member of the Niagara region. So we're happy to have him. Thanks for doing this today, Christian.
Thanks for having me, Brad.
So the price of Bitcoin today is, we just checked, 65.1 thousand US dollars. And we're about 3.5 years until the next Bitcoin halving. We're getting into an area of people are expecting the price to rise quite a bit in the next couple of months. And if we were to follow previous halving cycles, how are you feeling about Bitcoin right now?
Very bullish, but I've been bullish for the past 2 years as Bitcoin was going down. So I don't know if it's any indication if we are going to go up, but historically, it seems like, this is the time and we're nearing all-time highs again. So maybe this time is different. It won't go back down to 58,000.
Yeah, we'll find out. What's your take on Bitcoin hitting new all-time highs before the halving?
That was quite interesting. I feel like it was definitely front run. There was a lot of money at play, a lot of people making decisions on the positions that they wanted to play before the ETF became public. So while it didn't surprise me, it was definitely out of the ordinary. As we saw, it just kind of tapered off since March, and we're pretty close to what it did hit in March. So
right. And speaking of the ETFs, one interesting metric I saw is that BlackRock, one of the world's largest investment firms, is now the third biggest Bitcoin holder, if I'm not mistaken. What's your take on that? Do you see that as detrimental to Bitcoin, or what do you think about that?
No, I think that's just adoption at play. Anybody can access this ecosystem, this network. And for BlackRock to be getting into it now versus, 2011, 2012, I think it's just better for the people that did get in before BlackRock, essentially. So it is a little scary seeing how fast they're accumulating, as well as, MicroStrategy, all these big companies. But they're the people that truly understand Bitcoin. And it's... they're not stacking for nothing. That's for sure.
Right. Now, Satoshi's known to have about 1.1 million Bitcoins. I think BlackRock's at 300,000 and something Bitcoins. How long do you think it'll take before BlackRock becomes the number one Bitcoin holder?
Timing with anything to do with Bitcoin is almost impossible. So I don't know if they will be the number one Bitcoin holder. I know that that's their goal. But we do have a lot of exchanges that are also looking to accumulate as much as they can, and a lot of other companies. I follow one of the metrics of Bitcoin balances on exchanges very closely. And currently, I think as of today, it's like 2.4 thousand Bitcoin or 2.4 million Bitcoin that's still on exchanges collectively. And over the last 30 days, 100,000 Bitcoin was taken off exchanges. So it's not on a linear scale, obviously, but if we follow the same trend, there won't be any more Bitcoin left on exchanges in 2 years. So price will have to go up to kind of sustain that supply diminishing. Will BlackRock be able to accumulate 500, 400,000 Bitcoin for the next couple of years? It's very possible. But again, as we're seeing the price do what it does, they might not be able to purchase all that they want to at the price that they want to. So it's, again, not too much of a concern for me. I do know that they're trying to be a number one holder, but again, they're also competing with the rest of the people that want to hold Bitcoins. So
are you going to sell some of your Bitcoin to BlackRock?
Never. No.
Good. What about trimming? Do you think you'll trim if Bitcoin hits a certain price?
No. So Bitcoin philosophy is a really, really big thing to me, where I really think a person does need to be able to use their Bitcoin, be able to take advantage of the price appreciation, but there's way better ways to utilize it over selling. One of my favorite ways that I've been hearing is borrowing against your Bitcoin to be able to invest further, and then borrowing from what you invest in to pay off that Bitcoin loan. You just purchased, let's say you purchased a house with Bitcoin, and you just got control of all your Bitcoin. So you took control of a $300,000-$500,000 property, and all it cost you was the down payment. Very, very similar to just getting a regular mortgage, but this way you're doing it as like a HELOC where you can continuously borrow from it as well.
Right. So you can hold on to that
You can
precious
still
Bitcoin.
hold on to your Bitcoin, and
Yeah.
you can be able to utilize it whenever you do need money for a big purchase.
Right. Yeah, that seems like a good idea. Never sell your assets is kind of been my mentality, mostly applying to real estate, but I've never been in the situation where I'm applying to Bitcoin, but I'm sure that day will come eventually. So recently we've seen some ridicule about crypto, Bitcoin included, by Bill Maher. I'm not sure if you've seen the clip. It was going around.
Not the recent one.
The recent one?
Not the recent one. I saw the one that he did a year or two ago.
Okay.
Where he was bashing Bitcoin.
So there's a recent one. The title was on Twitter. He posted the video and he said, "Crypto's dirty little secret." And he's going on about how crypto uses 8% of the energy, and all this progress that we're making when it comes to putting EVs on the road, and all the progress that we're making with it is being sucked away by crypto. But what are your thoughts around that?
So I did see the Twitter post where he got fact checked on that. I think it was something like 1% of the total global energy usage is used by Bitcoin, not 7% that he stated. I think it was even like 0.1%. But when it comes to energy utilization in Bitcoin, it's been very interesting just seeing the amount of money that goes into Bitcoin mining operations, let's say. And it's not just to, uselessly waste money to mine these Bitcoins and we're just wasting that energy. A lot of what Bitcoin mining does is it's like a battery that you can just set up anywhere that has an abundance of energy. And you can now utilize that energy, whether it be renewable or non-renewable. And when you're not utilizing that energy, you can turn it on to Bitcoin miners. So Texas is a huge one that where just over the last 2 years, they put huge developments in their infrastructure, just expanding the energy sector. Because I don't know if you remember, 4 years ago, roughly, they had a cold front hit, one of the, coldest times over the last 20 years or something like that. And a lot of people were dying because they didn't have energy to support everybody turning on their heaters all at once. So there were quite a few deaths that happened that year. And what they did was they expanded that energy infrastructure, whereas most of that energy would be wasted until peak demand hits. They would sell it to Bitcoin miners who are able to utilize that energy. It doesn't get wasted. It produces Bitcoin, which in turn they could do whatever they want. They could resell it, but they could capture that energy and store it electronically, digitally. So I think Jordan Peterson was the first one to bring that idea to me when I was watching one of his shows. He said something like, it's like a digital battery that you could just store that energy. You can transfer that Bitcoin anywhere you want in the world, and you could utilize that value anywhere in the world. So to the average person that doesn't know much about Bitcoin, of course, it's very easy to point fingers and saying, you're using too much of our energy. But then you take a look at, you try to give them examples of, look at the banking sector, look how much energy they use to power on those buildings and to be able to process transactions to run their servers, how much energy utilization that sector does. Of course, they don't want to hear anything about it. We need banks. We need, people to be able to control that. And it's crazy that they can't kind of see that parallel with Bitcoin and the need to use energy to mine Bitcoin.
Right. Now, before we get too much deeper, do you mind explaining, just for a little bit of context, your role in the Bitcoin community as much as you can anyway?
Yeah, definitely. So I am a senior field operations manager with a pretty large Bitcoin mining company. We're an international company, so I manage all of the Canadian operations, but we do have a large, way more capacity in the States than we do in Canada. So I basically just travel back and forth between all of our Canadian sites and work with the teams at the respective sites to get as many units online as possible. That's my job.
Okay, so you're field operation manager.
Yeah.
And you're traveling around looking at sites, seeing how you can optimize and bring in more units
to be able to utilize the space that we have.
Okay.
So each site has their own amount of rack slots. And it comes down to there's so much data points that we have on each of the miners, whether it belongs to a customer or belongs to our company, and it's basically just efficiencies. So when we have a bunch of units that are down, needing repairs, it doesn't make economical sense to repair those miners right now if there are miners. So what we've been doing is we've just been setting it aside, and we have a lot of miners as well that we've been pulling to rack like new deployments, new units like S21s and soon to be S21 Pros. And we have a lot of our good units that we take down so we can rack a customer unit. So we prioritize customer units over our own self-hashing. But again, we do want to make best use of that space. So whenever there's an empty hole, we want to get it filled as fast as possible. Or when a unit goes down and it's one of ours, we pull it and we'll rack a good one of our units in that spot.
So they do that. You guys do your own Bitcoin mining, but people also pay you to rent your space.
Correct.
To put their own miners in there.
Yes.
No matter what type of unit they have?
No matter what type of unit they have, we do host altcoin miners as well.
Oh, okay.
We're primarily Bitcoin miners, and
wow.
Yeah, I hate touching those altcoin miners. They seem to just not be manufactured well.
Okay. What's an interesting shirt? Is that one of those cats on your shirt?
Cats.
Okay.
Yeah.
Almost seems like you're an Ethereum guy with that t-shirt.
Almost seems that way. Actually, I don't like Ethereum anymore, but that was a huge jumpstart into getting into Bitcoin and getting into Bitcoin mining, or just mining in general, actually.
Are you opposed to a small position in Ethereum?
Today, yes.
And why is that?
Because I foresee a longer term trend of Ethereum just not getting the same hype that it used to. Again, I was one of those people who, been through the 2017 bull run. I've seen Ethereum do its thing twice. But I like to value things in Bitcoin terms. So if you look at my trading view, like all of the altcoins that I have listed there are priced in Bitcoin. And I just love watching them diminish compared to Bitcoin. They'll probably go up in US dollar value as Bitcoin goes up compared to Bitcoin itself. And you can look at this on Litecoin over the past, I think 3 or 4 years, maybe 5 years.
You said Litecoin?
Litecoin, yeah. Okay. It's just diminishing. Slowly but surely. I think it's worth 100,000 sats per one Litecoin now. And with Ethereum just broke below 4 million sats per Bitcoin, or 4 million sats per Ethereum. And it's back above it a little bit, but during the bull run, it was at 6, 7, 8 million Satoshis per. So from like the peak related to Bitcoin denominated price, it's down like 50% compared to Bitcoin from Ethereum's all-time high. I know that there's a lot of diehards with Ethereum and a lot of believers. Again, Ethereum was the biggest start for me. I'm so blessed to be able to have mined Ethereum back in 2019, 2020 and trade that into Bitcoin during the last bull run. That was the best thing I could have ever done. And there was a point where it was, I'm going to transfer to Bitcoin. And when Ethereum's back down to 2 million sats per Bitcoin, I'll buy back into Ethereum. That was a couple years ago. Now, after, seeing how everything has been going, don't think that's the right play anymore. I think if Ethereum goes back down to 2 million Satoshis per Ethereum, I'm not going to buy back.
Not going to touch it.
No. You just got to keep reevaluating the space and seeing where things are, seeing where the hype is. And right now, it's all about Solana. There's going to be a number 2 to Bitcoin, I think, every bull run. Whether it be the same one every time, I don't think so. New things will come. And yeah, Solana is just getting a lot of headway. I've used both protocols as well. And Ethereum, clunky. It may have changed. I used it before the upgrade, but when I was using it, very clunky. It's relatively expensive still, slow. And just recently, and I had the same thoughts about Solana when, as Solana was doing its thing, I saw it go from $5 to over 200. And even still, I'm not going to touch that. But I did just want to play around with it because of all the hype surrounding the meme tokens. So I'm like, yeah, I'll throw a couple $100 into it. And as I was purchasing it from my exchange, throwing it onto the decentralized exchange or DeFi space, and just transferring that Solana into anything. HNT is a project that I used to really like, so I was playing around with that, playing around with a couple of the meme coins that never really did anything for me. And but just being able to see firsthand that, okay, this is how you use it. Sure, it might be centralized, but this is still a pretty decent protocol. You can still do a lot with it. You can release your own coin anything that you wanted to do on Ethereum, you can do, it feels like you can do on Solana, but easier, better, faster, in my opinion.
Right. Not that you're endorsing.
Not that I'm endorsing Solana at all. I don't even have a position in Solana anymore. I bought it as a gamble trade back in earlier this year or just before the year end in 2023 at I think $25 or something like that. And it was very surprising seeing it go to like 150 in less than a year. So I sold all of it, unfortunately. I think it is going to go up still a little bit.
Yeah.
I'm not holding any. I wouldn't endorse it. It was definitely very much a gamble play for me, and it very well might not be able, might not break all-time highs.
Yeah, I watched it go up. A lot of people started asking me about it last bull run, but for me, I'm like, well, you just watched it, like you said, go from $5 to $150, pushing $200. How are you going to jump in on that?
How much more steam is left?
Exactly, and you're just more likely going to lose a lot of percentage there on your money. But let's pivot back to Bitcoin.
Yeah.
And what do you think the most bullish indicators are going into this cycle for Bitcoin?
Bullish indicators. The ETFs are a big one. I don't know if you saw that BlackRock said that they wanted to do futures trading with their ETF, and I believe that got approved by the SEC.
Okay.
So that's, I feel like, is going to be a huge catalyst once that comes out. Might not be an immediate catalyst, but yeah, there's so much that all of these ETFs are doing. They're still accumulating a large amount of Bitcoin, and I just think we have to let time play out. Yeah, they'll slowly eat up all the Bitcoin until there's very little left on the exchange for this price. So it's just bound to go up. I think that's the major indicator for me. Retail, again, it's very awesome seeing retail becoming a little bit more exposed to Bitcoin in a way where they're not instantly just calling it a scam. And there's still a parallel with like Bitcoin and cryptocurrency, whereas I think a lot of people that are seasoned, it's now Bitcoin, you have Bitcoin, and then there's cryptocurrency, everything else. Bitcoin isn't cryptocurrency. And it's the masses are still saying cryptocurrency even when it comes to Bitcoin. They want to know more. That's what I'm seeing. It's not just instantly brushing you off like they did back in like 2017 to 2020 even. It's more of like, I'm surprised that's not dead yet. Maybe I should look into it.
Right.
And it's very awesome to see, because that just means, I don't need to hound people to like look into it or to, and I've noticed my pitches have gotten less pitchy. It's not like, here's why you should get into Bitcoin. It's, I'm into Bitcoin. And once you kind of just explain that, that's where the questions come. And I feel like people want to learn.
Right.
It's just, it'll take some time.
Would you ever say I'm into Bitcoin and people respond with, is that still a thing? Bitcoin's still around?
Often enough where I don't like to bring it up if it's not needed. If it's going to be a quick interaction and I want to keep it a quick interaction, even when people say, oh, what do you do? I just say I work for a data center. It's very difficult getting into the conversation saying you work for at a Bitcoin mining company. And then you just get tons of like, oh, wow.
Yeah.
And it's
yeah. And if they have no foundation of knowledge, like it's almost like, where do you start without this getting into a long, in-depth conversation?
Exactly.
Yeah. Especially if you're out and about, like, sometimes, and then people, if they don't have that foundation, you lose them very quickly sometimes. But I always like to ask people, or hear other people in Bitcoin, what their pitch is. And I guess it's best if you know that person and how to approach them and which aspect, because Bitcoin's very multidisciplinary, right? So it depends on their foundation of knowledge, and how you can approach that will definitely go a long way if you know that person a little bit more. So you talked about exchanges is one of the metrics that you look at, but what would you say is one of the most important metrics that you look at when it comes to Bitcoin?
Again, like I brought up, I think at the beginning of this podcast, total Bitcoin on exchanges, that is a very cool metric that I like to follow on a, monthly basis, not too often, but often enough. And again, 100,000 Bitcoin the last 30 days just eaten. If we looked at the last 60 days, 200,000 Bitcoin has just been taken off the exchange.
Right.
So, just that trend, when you have less supply and demand remains the same, just naturally you'll have a price increase. And it's, simple.
What about hash rate? And do you think that does price follow hash rate necessarily? And how important is that?
I wouldn't say that it follows hash rate. Definitely hash rate does go up when we see bull markets for sure. But I don't think it's hash rate that triggers a bull market. I think it's more of the bull market triggers people buying more Bitcoin miners to try to, front run
Right.
the Bitcoin going to 100,000 or whatever.
Mm-hmm.
I have seen a correlation where it's, I just find hash rate just continually goes up. So it's very easy to see the correlation when we're in bull markets. Hash rate goes up significantly faster than when we're just in stable mode. But when we're in stable mode or even in a bear market, you do see hash rate slowly continue to tick up still.
Mm-hmm.
So I don't think there's a, hash rate would be necessarily an indicator of like what price is going to do. But it definitely shows continued interest from people that do want to mine, and they're continuing to upgrade their hardware to support that goal.
Now, for our novice listeners, would you say a very simple way of saying what hash rate is Bitcoin computational power?
Yes.
Would that be the easiest way to say it?
Way to say it.
Okay, because that's what I've been going with. But now you have a personal passion when it comes to mining. You work in the industry, and not only that, but you've been putting on you've presented some slide decks to us, our Niagara Bitcoin meetup at Riverbank Tavern in Welland. And while I'm thinking about it, shout out to Joe Gonzalez for letting us use his podcast space. If you're looking to buy a home in the area, reach out to Joe Gonzalez of Right Choice Realty. I think he's out eating some pizza right now across the border, getting some reviews, getting some reviews done. But yeah, you have a personal passion for Bitcoin mining and what is known as solo mining. You put on a great presentation for us. You did another one. I think it was at the London meetup.
No,
Winnipeg.
At the Winnipeg Bitcoin.
Okay, in Winnipeg. Yeah. So can you just tell us a little bit about why you're passionate about solo mining and what that is?
Definitely. When I first got into mining, it was 2019. And even then it was everybody saying, oh, it's too late. You should have got into it back in 2014 when they came out with the first ASIC, something like that. And I still think, they were saying that about Bitcoin in 2017 when it was like $2,400, it's too late. So I'm going to take a flyer on this one, not listen to any of its too late people, and just purchase something. So if I didn't start Ethereum mining, I don't think I'd have as large of a Bitcoin stack as I do today. So I attribute most of what I currently have due to the mining sector. And for my career too, I've been an IT technician, just working with my father, small, medium-sized businesses out in Kelowna, BC. So I've been in the tech industry for most of my life and been exposed to all of that. So being able to find a position in the mining space was just fantastic. And I do believe that people should get more into mining, but I think they should treat it more like a node where you shouldn't expect rewards. If you want to expect rewards, sure, purchase a couple $1,000 ASIC, one of the newer models. But if you're just an average person that doesn't want to have the cumbersome, big, massive, loud, hot unit sitting in their basement, they can purchase something called, or they can purchase a solo miner. There's a couple different brands. The one I really like is BitAxe, just because they make everything open source. And I think that's unique because that lets anybody, any individual that has a couple $100 that wants to get into mining, wants to learn a little bit more about the space, they could hook that up, toss it onto a solo mining pool, and they like Solo CK is a good one, and just be able to learn a little bit more through that experience. And I went through this, but on a little bit larger scale with mining Ethereum, and I've just been hooked. Like since then, seeing how everything was done, my whole goal this was when like Ethereum was $200 as well. It was, I'm going to spend $3,000 in graphic cards, motherboard, all this equipment to get a Ethereum miner up and running. And I got 7 graphic cards. It was 8 or 7 RX 580s. And my whole goal when I priced it out, I was going to make $5 profit a day. And I was just going to hold on to that. And I didn't know it was, Ethereum was going to go from $200 to $5,000. And that was just exhilarating. That was the first time in history too, because again, I've been in the IT space. I would recycle people's old computers. This is the first time I could actually use a computer, mining something, collect an asset, and I was able to sell that computer with all the graphic cards for $1,000 more than I paid for it. First time, that was just so mind-boggling to me. And I got to keep all my Ethereum. So once I saw that, it was just like, okay, you can still mine. And right now, it does seem a little difficult because when you search what do you need to mine Bitcoin, you're going to get redirected to these links where, oh, you need a $5,000 ASIC. Where I believe that no, you just need a large amount of individuals to purchase a little tiny BitX. I think they're going for like $225, and you get 1.2 terahash per second, whereas like some of the newer big S21s ASICs, they're hashing at around 200. The one that's coming out, 234 terahash. So it's significantly less, but most of those people are mining to a pool, whereas the people that purchased that little BitX would be mining for themselves.
Right.
And you saw my presentation. It was something like 12,000 years until you hit a block. But
was it 12,000 years?
Yeah, 12,000 years for a single one, though. When you have them in mass, all around the world, individuals that it's not very difficult for somebody like you or me to spend $250 on something that's not going to give us an ROI. But if you do hit one of those blocks, that just does so much for the decentralization of Bitcoin. All of these bigger mining companies that mine purely for profit, purely to just resell that Bitcoin, we're taking a block from them once we hit a block. And there was one hit back in like July 24th. And also during my presentation too, if we did a study, if 3 million of these things were released, what would it look like? And if you had 3 million of those BitXs just mining, on average, once every 30 hours, one of those BitXs will solve a block. And it might not be one of those BitXs, it might be something else, but on an average scale, with the amount of hash rate that 3 million of those individual BitXs are running at, one of those 3 million people essentially should, on average, hit a block every 30 hours.
Right. Now, I don't play the lottery, but for me, and I think probably a lot of Bitcoiners would maybe join that and like to do that because it's way more exciting to win a Bitcoin block. And, it's something that happens every 10 minutes rather than what we say, like, depending on what lottery you're playing, once or twice a week. Now, I know we talked about, you did a little slide on the differences between like what is it compared to playing the Lotto 649 or something. I know you did a slide on that. So I wanted to just maybe, if you have those stats in your head still.
I do. It's not too much further off of like winning the Lotto 649. I think it was something like 14 times easier to hit a block. Yep, to hit a block than to win Lotto 649.
Wow.
Which is still very difficult.
Right. But we're talking like Lotto 649, you probably win a couple million, whereas the Bitcoin block, you'd win a couple $100,000.
Yes, yeah. Exactly. I think, and it does go up if people don't win it. So I think it surpasses like 50 million sometimes. And then you got 10 million people that play it.
Right.
When it's that high.
Different odds,
yeah. Different payout. But, if Bitcoin goes up and you hodl that 3 Bitcoin that you get as your solo mining reward, it could be a lot more than a couple $100,000.
For sure. Now, going into the bull run, and I noticed a lot during the last bull run, a lot of people said to me that Bitcoin is too expensive. And so they're buying Solana, they're buying Ethereum, they're buying anything and everything but Bitcoin. But they say, oh, but I'm going to start that way so I can play catch up because I missed the boat on Bitcoin and it's too expensive now. What do you say to those people?
Don't do that. But, I did it. It's one of those things where you kind of have to get an education on Bitcoin. And if you don't want to learn from other people's mistakes, you got to make those mistakes yourself. And I did, I was the epitome of that back in 2017. I always thought that I could trade my way to more Bitcoin. And all I need to do was just be the best day trader, time it properly, and get into things like Bitcoin Cash and ride that up, sell it, wait for it to go back down, buy it again, wait for it to go back up, sell it, like every degenerate. And at the end of the day, that's not the move. That's not the play if you're truly looking to extend your Bitcoin bag. This is a ruthless industry. Would you call crypto an industry?
I would.
Guess industry.
I would.
And it very much plays on people's what they think is going to happen in Bitcoin or crypto. It's probably going to do the opposite. And it really tugs on your psychology. And that's why I don't even trade anymore, because it's one of those things where I really think Bitcoin is going to go up. I load into it with the remaining amount of fiat that I have, and a week later it goes down 10, 15%. And that happens to me way too frequently. So I know I could be way further. I would have a lot less Bitcoin if I tried to time all of those moves. And just knowing where I was putting in all my available cash when I thought Bitcoin was, done going down, it's going to go up. Nope, it goes right down pretty much the next day. And purely, recognizing my emotions when it comes to like what Bitcoin's doing and sentiment and news, media hype, it's too tough to try to play that game.
Mm-hmm.
Everybody's going to say, oh, I can get into this meme coin and see what this meme coin has done. Yeah, and I saw it when it came out. I should have bought it, but didn't. Missed out. I could buy it now, but I'm also not looking to decrease my Bitcoin bag. So
Right.
I like to believe I learned from my mistakes back from 2017 to 2020.
Mm-hmm.
Still making mistakes to this day, but those are some of my most terrible. I'm glad I didn't have a significant amount of money at that time. Because I would have lost it all. And
Right.
pretty much I remember back in 2018 when Bitcoin went from 6,000 down to 3,000. I think a couple days before, it was in May, actually released a video on YouTube talking about like Bitcoin tangibility and why you don't need to hold it for it to be worth something. Less than a week later, Bitcoin went from 6,000 to 3,000. And even after that, I sold everything. I thought Bitcoin was going to go down to 1,500. So I'm going to buy back in double. No, it didn't go. It tapered off around 4,000 for 6 months, and then it went to 6,000 again. And that's when I got into it, and I'm like, okay, I'm gonna learn my lessons.
Yeah.
And just buy Bitcoin, buy it on a regular, DCA, and it'll work. It'll work itself out.
Yeah. I mean, that's a pretty big drop. Like it almost touched 20,000, right? And then jump. And my mentality was, as it kept going, I'm like, this has to be the bottom. Okay, this has to be the bottom. But I like you, I came in 2017, so I was very naive and got into mostly ICOs, I would say, and alternative altcoins or whatever you want to call them, into crypto, and just ended up with way less Bitcoin than which I should have had. Now, talking about those other things and that hype in the space when Bitcoin goes up and everything else likes to follow, do you have any insight to what maybe the next craze may be going to the cycle? We saw, 2017 was like ICOs. We saw NFTs. We saw meme coins, ordinals on Bitcoin. What is any insight to what the next thing could be?
I don't. It's very difficult to pinpoint it before it happens in the space. Honestly, I don't know what's going to be that next ICO craze. That next NFT craze.
Yeah.
And there most likely will be one.
Right. I think it was,
they're most likely.
Every cycle seems like there was something. I don't know if it was you or somebody else and was saying like, let's just cancel all season. Was it you?
Yeah. Season's canceled.
All seasons canceled. Yeah. Yeah. I mean, it'd be a hard lesson for a lot, but you and I both went through that, right? So now, being in the industry that you are there any unique laws in Canada that you know of different from other nations when it comes to Bitcoin mining?
Yes, actually. It's unfortunate to see a lot of the Canadian provinces make this decision to kind of put a moratorium on Bitcoin mining. That's exactly what they did. It was like an 18-month moratorium back in late 2022 for Manitoba, that Manitoba release. So we were doing pretty neat things in Manitoba. We were coming out with a new site every couple of months, and Manitoba regulations just hit us with that 18-month moratorium. There's a lot of people. We have way too many applicants for people who want to set up new Bitcoin mining sites and how much power that they're asking for. We don't know where this industry is going. We don't know too much about it. So we're going to wait 18 months. We're going to reevaluate this industry, the space, and in 18 months, we will let you know our decisions on what has, what has come forth from our discussions. They didn't come to any conclusions. So that got placed on for another 18 months.
Oh,
And a lot of other provinces are following. I believe Quebec is one of them. New Brunswick as well. They put a moratorium. BC put a moratorium. They just built like a huge dam in BC. And there's a big Bitcoin mining company that did say that they wanted some of that power, and the power company basically laughed in their face and says, we're not giving you that.
right.
And it's unfortunate, I feel like a lot of the regulation for Bitcoin mining in Canada is just stifling this industry when we're seeing places like Bhutan, what they're doing in the States with Bitcoin mining, like everything there is thriving. It's helping the local economy that it's in, and you're able to profit off of excess energy. Well, we have a couple dams in Manitoba that are just completely shut off. We could easily just turn them back on again. Water's always flowing. It's always going to be raining, and be able to utilize that energy. But because they can't utilize that energy, they're just going to shut it off. All that energy gets wasted, or just doesn't even get, generated in the first place. It's unfortunate.
So with this 18 months, what are they saying is limited? You cannot mine at all?
You can still mine if you have power. You can still mine, but they will not give you any new power contracts.
Okay.
So power contracts when it comes to Bitcoin mining is a very delicate subject, because every community kind of has different regulations, different says into what you can do with Bitcoin mining. Again, there's a huge noise factor when you bring one of those sites into communities. There's a lot that goes into it. And again, with power, it's, everybody likes to think we have a small subset of power, a limited amount of power. And while we, essentially do, it's when our star burns out, we won't have any more power in this on Earth, pretty much. But again, it's just one of those things where people need to understand that Bitcoin mining is not. It's been around for how long now? Since 2009. What is that? 15 years?
Yeah.
And if it was going to go away, if it was a scam, if it was going to take people's money, if it was actually bad, we would have found some actual reasoning behind that. Whereas you've had tons of people look into the code, stress test it, fork it, try to break up the development team. And we see Bitcoin near all-time highs, 15 years later. I think it has kind of proved itself and solidified itself as like something that humans can interact with, and it should be legal. It should be free for us to do that, and it shouldn't be stifled. So that's where I say it's just very unfortunate to see that they did put that moratorium in a couple of provinces.
Interesting.
Doesn't affect anything that's currently operating, but
nothing.
Nobody
new.
could create anything new.
Okay. Do you see a switch in federal government changing that, or do you think that's sort of independent of the federal administration?
No, I do think that they are going to, I don't know if it's going to be a revolution or if it's going to be, they're going to see the states continue to profit, and great things happen with those communities that do allow Bitcoin mining. And Canada's poised as one of the best places to mine Bitcoin. We got the cooler weather being up north. It's cheap energy. We have tons of dams and running water that we could use hydroelectric energy from that, wouldn't decrease fossil fuels. And it's just really unfortunate that the decision makers of that just doesn't want to have anything to do with Bitcoin, doesn't want to learn it. And it's stifling growth, that's for sure. Like, again, I think I understand where this is going with Bitcoin, and the decisions that Canada's making in a whole is not good. We're going to get into it after everybody else gets into it. So yeah, the world is going to front run Canada in terms of what we decide to do with Bitcoin if we don't get our act together quick.
Right. Yeah. Hopefully, they learn a lot more and realize, this is good to get ahead of the game and utilize, the cold weather that we have for cooling purposes. China is a big actor in this space. I think I just saw something where China still has like 50 or 55% of all Bitcoin mining, even though that they've made it illegal in the nation. What do you know about this? Like, how is this not enforced in somewhere like China, a communist state where it's their way or the highway? How are people still getting away with Bitcoin mining there? And what does that what does that indicate to you that still 55% of it's happening there, even though it's illegal?
So I just think saying something's illegal doesn't necessarily mean that it's going to halt all activity of that. Perfect indications, drugs.
Yeah.
Drugs are illegal, but we're seeing it rampant, and especially in Canada. We're seeing it. It's illegal, but people are still doing it.
Right.
Same thing with mining Bitcoin in China. Sure, it's illegal. I'm sure there's a lot of Bitcoin mining sites that do get raided over the last couple of years, and probably still do. But I don't think their goal was necessarily just to ban Bitcoin mining. I feel like they were just trying to ban Bitcoin initially, but once they found that they can't ban Bitcoin, let's ban Bitcoin mining. That doesn't work. All right, well then let's silently allow people to use Bitcoin again. And that's what they've done. And, you haven't heard too much media sources on that, but China just silently unbanned Bitcoin. They let Hong Kong open up an exchange for crypto, and they just had a huge blockchain event over there a while ago. It wasn't recent. But they're slowly starting their descent into the crypto space publicly. I think it was, everybody has conspiracy theories, and I don't want to get into any of those, but when it comes to China and their decisions on Bitcoin, it very well could be that they already have a large position in Bitcoin. They were one of the first people to manufacture Bitcoin ASICs to, be able to mine Bitcoin way more efficiently. They could be sitting on a huge stack of Bitcoin, and now they're just letting everybody fight over the last, 1 and a little bit million that is left to mine. So that could be their plan, but it's very interesting seeing their public face being like, no, we don't like Bitcoin. Bitcoin's bad.
Yeah.
We're going to ban it. We don't want to have anything to do with it. And then in the 11th hour, Hong Kong just releases, a Bitcoin exchange, crypto exchange that anybody can invest, Chinese yuan to purchase crypto.
Yes, and even if the nation doesn't hold Bitcoin, that's certainly a large portion. But I mean, there's a lot of citizens there that do, and like you said, they're the ones creating the ASICs. Bitmain, the biggest Bitcoin mining manufacturer, is out of China.
Yep.
Yeah, it's very, very interesting what's going on there. Does Bitcoin kind of conflict with the ethos of China and what their vision is? Do you think?
It definitely does. Again, Bitcoin is freedom. That's what a lot of people attribute it to. And when we talk China, communist regime, it's very much the opposite. So it's definitely something that they've publicly wanted to stifle. But again, just saying something's illegal doesn't mean that their citizens don't continue to interact with it. And yeah, the biggest Bitcoin mining manufacturer for these units is based out of China still. And they're still operating. They're still manufacturing units. I'm sure they're still, running a lot of those units too, especially the newer generations a couple months before they actually sell them to the public.
Definitely. Yeah.
So, and I'm sure the Chinese government knows about it. And of course, they're not going to do anything. Like the biggest mining pool, you got Ant Pool, or one of the biggest. Most of that hash rate is from China. And yeah, Chinese government isn't doing anything about it.
What scares you the most about Bitcoin?
There's a lot of things that scare me with Bitcoin, and I think the biggest thing is just seeing how it changed my life. For the better, but it was scary seeing where I was 5 years ago, 6 years ago, doing what I was doing, and kind of just aimless, just going through life, trying to just have fun. We only have one life,
Well, 5 years ago, you were what, 22 years old?
I was, about 20.
There's a lot of 22-year-old aimless people out there, so don't be so hard on yourself.
No, exactly. I just wanted to find something that I could just get addicted to and spend my time, like all my time on it, let it absorb me and me benefit from it at the end of the day. And the only thing that I could, find that made sense was Bitcoin. I tried to put in the same level of research into things like Ethereum and other altcoins that I did with Bitcoin.
Yeah.
It made sense with Bitcoin. But once I got into looking at the Ethereum code and different things with that, it was way too complicated. That did not make sense to me. I created an ERC20 token, and sure, I could do this. Cool. But it didn't really make sense to me. And how fast things can change too. Like the core rules for all of these coins just instantly get changed if there's, individuals that run that ecosystem that decide this is the way we want things. Whereas Bitcoin, it's changed very little over the last, since it got, since it was created. So
so your biggest concern is the amount of change, or?
the biggest concern is, maybe it's not a concern, but it's what it can do for people and their lives. And it would be a major concern too, because I was talking to you about this not too long ago about the gambling aspect of Bitcoin. And it's very much, if you're currently not good with money, if you're, still just, living day by day, and it's tough to even gather $100 to invest, let's say, you're probably not going to looking at Bitcoin in the way that you should be looking at it as. But if you're somebody that is disciplined, you could put $100 away, every 2 weeks, every week, and you're currently doing that right now in cash. It's very simple to transition to Bitcoin. You're maybe even just a little bit of that, half, $50 every week or 2 weeks into Bitcoin, and then just seeing what that does. And a lot of people I talk to, that's how I explain that I would recommend for them to do. Just toss $100 a week. You get paid weekly, toss $100 a week into Bitcoin. You won't even know that it's gone. Treat it as like a long-term savings plan, and it will pay off for you in the long run. Not financial advice, but there's a very high chance that it could be one of the best things that you could do for yourself. And a lot of people that I know have taken that advice, and it seems like they're doing well. They've over the past 3-4 years have accumulated a pretty decent stack. But sorry, going back to the question, I find people can definitely go down the rabbit hole of, I can get rich quick with Bitcoin, and that's very much not the case. And I had that perception when I first got into it too, and it just bit me in the ass. It burned me, and I didn't have any Bitcoin during my first year after that. Seeing everything play out, so it's.
Well, what about, like, I guess to be more specific, like what aspect or what could happen where that could make Bitcoin fail? I guess, is it like quantum computing? Is it, like, is there something that could happen that stifles Bitcoin or just completely kills it and it goes to zero one day?
There's quite a few of those events that could happen for sure. I don't think any of those concern me too much. Again, how do you prepare for quantum computing attack on Bitcoin? How do you prepare for a World War III event on what's going to happen with Bitcoin?
So from a technical standpoint, you don't really have any major, like, there's nothing that stands out to you.
Again, anything could happen, and when we get closer to that, it might be more of a concern once we start seeing developments towards certain events like that. But honestly, I've heard pretty much all of them, and no, none of them concern me to the point where I should sell a little bit of my Bitcoin, or I should hold some cash, or I should diversify. Never once has that crossed my mind.
Right. Now, did you have an aha moment? Like, was there a certain aspect about Bitcoin? I'm like, oh my God, this is it.
Yes. And that was the pivotal moment for me too, in turning my life into a Bitcoin life, essentially. So back in 2020, I have been accumulating since the end of 2018, and just dollar cost average. That's all I did. It was pretty boring. Didn't really get into much. I got into a little bit of Ethereum mining as well. And after COVID hit, and me losing my job at the casino, my job at the bank, I had a little bit of rush doing the IT stuff with my dad because everybody wanted to work from home. So I would set up their remote laptops and VPN'd into their office. But once that dried up, I was literally doing nothing for close to a year. And while I wasn't making money, Bitcoin was going up. We were doing very well. Everybody was stuck at home and wanted to get into, investing. And I saw my net worth when Bitcoin hit its all-time high. Just the gains that I got from Bitcoin was more than I've earned working 7 years prior to that. I just remember just looking at, my balance, and
it's more than you could save.
It was more than I would ever imagined I would ever have at that, especially at that age. I was 23 at the time. Again, none of my peers, did anything similar. It was just very eye-opening to me that 7 years of energy and effort was just created with less than a year of Bitcoin gains. And that was kind of the moment where it's like, I need to stop whatever I'm doing and just get into Bitcoin. And I really wanted to get into Bitcoin mining because I was already mining Ethereum. I understood it. Ethereum was just switching to proof of stake at that time, so you couldn't even mine it anymore. And it's all about Bitcoin. That's all I cared about. I really didn't care about my Ethereum that I mined. I wanted to hold a little bit of it, but there came a time where it's like, it's just going to keep going down relative to Bitcoin. I don't hold any more Ethereum. I'm not going to buy it back unless something major happens. I'm not completely writing it off, but where it's going, what's currently happened or developed over the past 2 years, definitely not getting into Ethereum unless something big changes.
So would you consider yourself a Bitcoin maxi?
Yes, I definitely transformed into a Bitcoin maxi. Yeah.
Interesting. So I know you said like your father has worked in the IT space, so you kind of have that technical exposure, but like when it comes to Bitcoin, you're pretty well self-taught.
Yes. Oh my gosh. And just learning about Bitcoin too, I'm still learning. But just when I first got into it, I got into it like everybody else, you can get rich quick. And I remember my friends just being like, yeah, we can trade Bitcoin Cash and make a boatload of Bitcoin. So what's the question?
Being self-taught.
Self-taught.
Yeah.
So that kind of got my feet wet with buying my first little bit of Bitcoin and being like, hey, this is pretty cool. I have such an addictive personality. So when I find something that I like, I go deep into it. And there was like a 6 month period back in early 2017 to like the end of 2017 of where I just didn't want to do anything but understand what I was putting my money into. And I broke it down to, all right, I want to take a look at the code. So I was able to pull the code, see the underlying basis of what Bitcoin is through code. And while I couldn't decipher every single line, there were a lot that I could, understand and see how certain functions work and purely being distributed. I have that code on my computer. I'm going through it right now. I can change a lot of the stuff on it, release it, and there I just forked Bitcoin. So I did come out with a fork of Bitcoin, not really came out, I never mined it, but I changed a couple lines in there and then, oh my gosh, this makes sense. So
you're testing it, playing around with it.
Exactly. And, Bitcoin ATMs too, just being able to see physically, like, could I turn these Bitcoins into, usable cash? And there was a Bitcoin ATM near me where I can just go in, scan my phone, and then it spit out 320s. And I could, take my girl on a date. It was just super cool. And yes, I just slowly started building that understanding. And then I started learning about economics and figuring out different things that are happening in the conventional markets. And then, I don't like that. I don't like that the market's only open for a set period of time. I don't like how most of the movement happens in the after hours where, not just everybody can get into that.
Right. I'm big on that too. Like, why is that fair? How is that fair at all?
Fair. It's not fair. And when you have large movements, like if a stock moves 15% in the course of 15 minutes or something like that,
right?
Something like that, then they have a stock halt where the stock doesn't trade at all for an hour. And the reasoning behind that from the government is we want people to be rational. So we're going to put a halt. You can't trade it. And it'll let people think about what they're about to do next.
Right. And meanwhile, just kills all the momentum.
And they know exactly what they're doing. And, it forces people to, possibly sell their positions. Like, again, we saw with GameStop, it was very interesting.
You couldn't buy, but you could sell. What are people going to do?
Yeah.
Right.
So, of course, all the momentum gets lost. And that would have never happened in a decentralized trading platform.
Definitely not. No.
So,
not a truly decentralized.
Yeah.
Anyways.
So I started in Bitcoin with my financial journey. Actually, I was a big saver beforehand too. I was huge on just saving as much as you possibly can, but keeping it in dollars. I wouldn't really put it into anything. So to be able to find another instrument that I could put all of my saved money into, and it's actually going to appreciate at a faster rate than the market, the general market, has less rules than the general market. And in my opinion, it can't be, from everything that I've learned up until that point, it can't be taken down. It's
Right.
far past that point. So
What about scaling? Like, can Bitcoin scale so everybody in the world can save into Bitcoin?
yes, and I don't think it needs to scale on layer one. I think if we take a look at a lot of different things that were being built on Bitcoin and Lightning and different amount of transactions, if we had that on Bitcoin layer one, it would definitely be super difficult in 100 years for the average person to run a node with how much is just continually getting saved on the blockchain. So we want to make this as decentralized as possible. The best way to do that is to give it less than $300 entry point into being able to store all of Bitcoin. That was the biggest thing for me. It's
When it comes to like an average investor, though, will it come to a point where even one Satoshi is too expensive for the little guy?
well, that's again what I like about the scaling, because there are scaling solutions, especially with Lightning, and even eventually on chain, you could have where if a Satoshi does, it requires a couple hours of work just to earn one Satoshi. We could break down give it another 4 decimal places. So instead of 8, you have 12, and then it wouldn't even be called a Satoshi at that point. But if Bitcoin lasts thousands of years and they just
That would be a
more continuously
big change.
Oh yeah, it would be. But at the end of the day, it's still Bitcoin. It's still the same, everything. It just has 4 more zeros that you can now interact with.
Christian, what are your favorite resources in this space, whether it be book, podcasts, YouTube channel, besides the halving report, of course?
Definitely crypto Twitter. I think that was the biggest way that I could learn more. Back in, I think 2021 was when I created my first Twitter page. Purely for crypto. And yeah, I still have a crypto-based name. It's not Bitcoin. I need to change that pretty soon.
Okay.
But yeah, definitely, if you just follow a bunch of the smart people on Bitcoin Twitter and just see what they're saying, try to look at it. If you're not into Bitcoin now, try to look at it with outside of the box thinking. And it's I like to say follow the smart people.
Yeah.
If you just listen to the smart people, see what they're saying, follow the successful people in the space. They've done something right. They have, great things to say. They have a good understanding of what's happening. That's the best place, in my opinion, to learn from.
Who was if you can recall, who was your first prominent figure that you followed in this space, and then who would be your favorite now?
Dennis Porter. He was the one that comes to mind. He actually is the one that indirectly got me this position. I don't want to get too far into it, but it was very cool what he's done. And I followed him since day one. Once I got on Bitcoin Twitter, he was like one of my first follows. I think I retweeted it. My very first retweet was something that he posted. And he's basically just I'd call him a Bitcoin philanthropist. So he runs something called the Satoshi Action Club or Satoshi Action Fund. And basically that's just to help create legislation in the States for adopting Bitcoin mining and creating solid regulation, positive regulation on being able to have the right to mine Bitcoin, being able to have the right to self-custody. And he's already onboarded a couple states where that's what they're implementing into the rule of law, purely because he's explaining what Bitcoin is to them, and people are slowly getting it. So he's definitely one of my most memorable follows.
So first and favorite today?
I haven't really followed him that much for the past year. He's still doing amazing things for Bitcoin in general. And again, I owe him a lot for where I am today. But favorites, I would have to say Anthony Pompiliano.
Really?
He was great back in the day. I really liked pretty much everything he was saying. He had a great way of putting different things. And a lot of what he did, that too. I could follow people and everything that they're advertising, I could just take with a grain of salt. I disassociate the person with what they're advertising. Got to make money somehow. And, you're not going to win 100% of who you're advertising with. Especially in this space.
So funny enough, I think it was just yesterday I got my BlockFi settlement because I was following Pomp, I followed Peter McCormick and Jason Williams all very, very closely, and I've had two of the three of them on the show, and they all were pumping BlockFi for so long. And I'm like, okay, this has got to be legit. I'll throw a little bit in there, and I had a funny feeling right before it went, like very close to when it filed bankruptcy, like before the whole FTX thing happened. I had a funny feeling in my stomach, and I'm like, this isn't right to me. I pulled out, but I had some shit coins on there that I like token or something like that, and that got stuck on there. And then whatever, it's been 2 years now, 2.5 years now, I just got like a couple $100 settlement. It deposited into my PayPal all these years later, and I basically wrote that off. I didn't even want to read up on the lawsuit and all this legal jargon. I'm just like, whatever. I just assumed that I had lost that money, and it did lose most of its value anyways, because those tokens were worth a lot more when it went down. And then obviously the prices went down. So it wasn't, thankfully, I think I had like 25K on there at one point. Yeah. So like within like a couple of months, I would say a month or two before all that happened, I pulled it all out. So I got really
timed it perfect.
I did time it perfectly. And I actually reached out to Jay Wills, and I'm like, aren't you the BlockFi King champion or whatever, wearing those belts around? And he's like, oh no, I pulled it out like a year ago. And I'm like, oh, did I miss the memo? I'm like, what the hell, man? So anyways, yeah, self-custody all the way. I that's how I onboard people through now, as you know, through Bitcoin Well, and right to self-custody, no option to even store on there.
It's the way to go. Yeah.
The only non-self-custody, I guess, would be the Lightning. But I guess Coinos, the company we've been using at the Riverbank Tavern, and some people around this area in Canada, I guess, have just, like Cole. Have you met Cole?
I haven't met him, but I know of him. Yeah.
You know of Cole?
Yeah.
Cole just messaged me on Telegram, and he said that they just came up with some sort of non-custodial solution for Coinos. So I'm yet to check that out, but that's interesting. Christian, if you could meet one person, whether it be in this space or not, who would it be? If you could sit down like we are right now, who do you think that might be?
Probably have to be Dennis Porter.
Dennis Porter?
I was asked this question a couple years ago too,
okay.
And I said the same thing. Again, I owe a lot of what I'm currently doing to him, and of how I've developed in this industry, and all of that started because of one of his tweets. So it would be very cool to, just be able to have a one-on-one conversation with him, let him know that, and be able to dig into his brain a little bit further for some more Bitcoin philosophy.
Okay. Very cool. I'm going to definitely pay more attention to Dennis, since you mentioned and showed him a few times on the show. Everyone's favorite question: what's your Bitcoin price prediction going into this cycle? What's the top? What do we hit?
And I stopped giving price predictions a couple years ago.
Oh no. So this means absolutely nothing to anybody. Take it with a huge grain of salt.
A huge grain of salt.
Throw out a number there. Throw out a guess.
Huge grain of salt. 450,000.
50,000 US. Wow. Yeah. And then you think it touches it and then just free falls, or do you think
I think maybe it'll hit 450,000, and we'll see it drop back down to 120,000. At 120,000, it's probably going to be the sky's falling. You want to sell all your Bitcoin. Bitcoin's going to zero. And then it might go to 80,000 and bottom out at 80,000, and then everybody thinks it's dead. And then it slowly goes back up.
Could this be the bottom price right now? Could it go all the way up there and then jump back down here for 6 months?
It could be. I still think we've been rubber banding close to 58,000 for the past.
What does that mean?
4 months. Oh, whenever Bitcoin just trails out of $58,000 US is the price that I usually follow. Say it goes down to, or let's say it goes up to 64. It's been finding a way over the past couple of months to go back down to 58, and then it goes back down to 54, and then 58. And there's just a running joke on crypto Twitter where Bitcoin just rubber bands to 58,000.
Just seems like that number.
Just seems like it. Yeah, we could possibly rubber band there once or twice more before the end of this year, or before the true momentum kicks in. But it could happen anytime, so I'm not making any decisions on my Bitcoin off of that.
Okay. Now you've been going to the Niagara meetups, the ones that you can make it anyway too. What's your take on that, on our Niagara meetup that's happening, and maybe compare it to some of the other ones that you've been to or seen?
Oh, definitely. So again, Bitcoin meetups, they're one of the coolest things. They're just a way to meet fellow Bitcoiners like ourselves, who just share something in common. And a lot of my peers, they don't really understand Bitcoin, and I have all this knowledge that I'm just trying to get out there and stress test and figure out if, somebody can tell me why I'm wrong. And of course, a lot of my peers, they wouldn't, just can't even get into that conversation with them. So that's why I love going to the Niagara Bitcoin meetups, because I get to go back and forth with a bunch of other Bitcoiners who are knowledgeable on this and can ask them a couple things, can kind of see where personal sentiment lies with each individual, and make decisions based off of what I'm hearing other Bitcoins think and do. So,
Okay.
And compared to like the other one, I've only ever gone to the Manitoba Bitcoin meetup and the one here in Niagara, both super cool. They have a clubhouse in Manitoba, so it's pretty much just this place right in the middle of downtown that's only Bitcoin, and it's super cool. They have like multiple meetups a month, and yeah, love the person that runs it, Kevin. If you're listening, you run an awesome Bitcoin meetup there. Thanks for letting me present my presentation there as well last time.
Shout out to Kevin.
And yeah, you just meet the coolest people at these things. So anybody listening to this, if you haven't gone to a Bitcoin meetup and you're into Bitcoin, definitely go to one. You won't regret it.
Yeah, definitely. Community is huge, and having those face-to-face conversations goes a long way. For the first how many years in this industry, it was just me online, talking to people online. Anybody in real life is like, what is this Bitcoin thing? You're crazy. Sure, Brad. Right. So I definitely agree with you. Get out there, meet people. It's an awesome space to be in. Very hopeful space, with everything going on in the world. I think Bitcoin is hope, and actually, reinstated hope in myself. I was kind of a little bit pessimistic about the world until I kind of came and figured out Bitcoin and realized, had my aha moment with Bitcoin. So that's good advice, man. We're at, Christian, we're at hour and 10 minutes, hour and 11 minutes here. So I want to open it up for you. If you have any final comments or questions, if not, man, just let us know maybe where we can follow you or learn more.
Well, I did want to just go off of your Bitcoin is hope. That's very much what it is for me. And I feel like a lot of other people's in our age demographics mind is, you don't really have the American dream anymore. So that's all kind of truly want. At the end of the day, I feel like Bitcoin is the best chance that I have towards that, being able to own a home with these forever increasing housing prices, be able to, support a family, and it's very basic needs that a lot of Bitcoiners have. And it's surprising seeing that most Bitcoiners just truly just want to purchase a farm in the middle of nowhere and just be free. Very much just purchasing Bitcoin, holding, waiting, and it's one of the best chances I feel like we have. But we'll wrap it up there. You can follow me at Big Crypto Review. I'll be changing that tag over the next month or two, I think. But you can find me there once this gets released.
Okay. Awesome. Thanks so much for doing this, Christian.
Thanks for having me, Brad. It's been awesome.
Shake it out. Cheers, man.
Cheers.